Hello, and on the gaming table today, we're taking a look at an example battle for Command Decision. This is the short version. I will put up a longer version of this later as well. So this is just a quick example illustration battle and a short version of the battle report. This might take 5 minutes or so. I'll do a longer version later on. And here I've got a couple of forces, a German force and a Soviet force, and you could consider this maybe 19th Panzer Division versus elements of the Soviet 29th Territorial Rifle Corps near the city of Velikie Luki, which a lot of fighting took place there, July-August 1941. So the German forces that we had here, I had one battalion of infantry that I've got painted up, also a small reinforcing panzer company, just kind of for flavor and something to put on the table, and they are veteran morale 9. Now the Soviet forces are a weakened infantry battalion, and they've got an attached anti-tank gun and some mortars. Their regular morale 8. So this is the battlefield I set up for this one. Again, just a demonstration battle. It's not meant to replicate anywhere in particular. The scale of the game is also 1 inch, is 50 yards. And so this table, as it's laid out here, is about 36 inches from bottom to top and about 54, 55 inches left to right. So in the game, that would represent about a mile north-south and a mile and a half kind of across the table from left to right. Now the Germans were setting up in the top right corner there behind the tree lines to begin with, and the Soviets, they weren't sure where they were. They had some suspected positions where they might be, as marked by the 4 Soviet stands there, but they didn't have any identified targets at this stage of the game. So they laid out their initial orders for their first moves, and we got going. So for the first turn, the Germans moved forward fairly cautiously down the middle tree line there, moved their 3rd company up onto the right of this picture, their left flank, going to move down that other tree line in later turns. In turn 2, the Germans again moved forward down that tree line fairly cautiously, with the 2nd company here watching and kind of covering, see if anything pops up from that small built-up area there. And then in the 3rd turn, something started to happen. As the Germans prepared to move in from the central tree line into that built-up area, they started getting hit with 82mm mortar shells that started falling on their lead platoon. The platoons did make it into the built-up area without too much effect. One of them was suppressed. However, there were no Soviet forces in that built-up area. It was vacant. So in the following turn, the Germans started to consider their next moves forward. The 82mm mortar fire from the Soviets shifted, was adjusted, and kept falling onto that same platoon. That platoon actually got taken out by those mortar shells as the other 2 companies moved forward, and as 3rd company sent a platoon forward to the next tree line there, it was suddenly ambushed by 2 platoons of Soviet infantry. It was shot up a bit. It didn't take too many casualties. It managed to fall back in relatively good order and made it back to the cover of the trees. So now in the next turn, the Germans have their own fire that they can lay in. They send in their 81mm mortar and their 75mm infantry gun to shell the Russian positions, the platoons that were identified there. The 82mm mortars kept pounding the machine gun now that's in the central tree line, and the other platoons get ready to move forward to better positions. Here's the view from the infantry gun as it shoots down the left side of this tree line into the Soviet defenders there. The Germans moved cautiously forward once again. On the left, the 3rd company sent in 2 platoons to try and assault the suppressed defenders. One of the Soviet platoons had fled. However, another platoon popped up at the junction of the tree lines there, and one of the platoons again that was involved in that assault got pushed back. It ran back into the trees as a result of opportunity fire. Now, in some, although the Germans closed to within kind of close assault distance of that tree line, they actually got pushed back and they got demoralized. They were shaken back in the trees where they'd started their assault from. However, on the other side of the table, 1st and 2nd companies had been moving around and taking up a flanking position on that tree line. The Soviet commander at this stage decided to try and withdraw that lead company that they've got there in that tree line. Continuing fire on that remaining platoon there from both the mortars and the 75mm infantry gun, as small arms fire rained in there as well. That actually eliminated one of the platoons and drove the other ones back. The disengagement generally happened okay. Over on the right flank, 2nd Company there in the trees had tried to send again a platoon forward to the tree line at the top of the screen there. However, it was found to be defended again, and one of their platoons was essentially eliminated. Now, the German commander here tries to do a rally order on his 3rd Company. He wants to get them rallied and back into the fight. And at this stage, the reinforcement panzer company showed up and ready to move around and get into the action as well. So in the German turn, the rally order removed the shaken status from 3rd Company there. 1st Company consolidated in the 1st tree line. 2nd Company weighed in lots of small arms fire from its machine guns and other weapons into those defending Soviet platoons that are in that tree line near the top of the screen. Now, they actually managed to eliminate both of those platoons. However, at the same time, as the tanks were approaching, a 45mm infantry gun suddenly appeared in the kind of the woody broken ground at the end of that tree line, took a pot shot at the Panzer II that was leading the company and managed to take them out. So a platoon of Panzer IIs bite the dust here. However, at this stage, the Soviet defences are crumbling a little bit. They've lost 3 platoons and they're falling back towards the main village there. In the next turn, the Germans moved on towards the next tree line on the bottom of the screen there. At the same time, the tanks at the top of the screen withdrew back out of range, and the mortars tried to suppress the anti-tank gun right at the top of the screen, just hidden by a tree. 1st Company in the middle there, taking possession of that tree line and starting to put effective small arms fire into the Soviets. One of the approaching platoons of 3rd Company here got driven back by small arms fire coming from a machine gun in the built-up area. Over here, the mortars finally put paid to the 45mm anti-tank gun, managed to force the crew to withdraw. And then 2nd Company on that side moved up to take the tree line and make sure that that crew couldn't get back to their gun. Meanwhile, near the bottom, most of the German platoons managed to make it to the next tree line. They eliminated the machine gun that was in the built-up area with a hail of machine gun fire of their own. Now here, the Germans moved their tanks up. They maintained lots of small arms fire into the buildings here. The tanks moved up to a range of about 500 yards or so and just kept peppering the built-up area with their machine guns and small caliber HE. And that eventually forced the Soviets to withdraw. They took too much damage, especially when the mortars and the infantry guns started joining in, and so eventually they fell back as well. So the end of the game at 13:30 hours, the Soviets had lost basically their entire battalion. They had 1 stand uninjured there, 1 platoon uninjured. The Germans had only taken 2 platoons of casualties here, but they'd been held up for 5 or 6 hours by the stubborn Soviet defense. So I hope that gives you a quick look at an example battle for command decision. As I said, I'll do a longer version of this video soon, so look forward to that. But for now, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again real soon.